Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is November 6th, and we're on page 16 in your magazines. And today we're going to talk about a gorgeous living creature.
That's right. And I want to say, if I asked you to name 5 or 10 gorgeous creatures, I bet you wouldn't guess the animal we're talking about today.
I was thinking of this Japanese guy I dated many years ago.
This gorgeous creature.
He was gorgeous. Excuse me, that's the first thing I think of. No, I don't know.
So today we're talking about nature's living rainbow, the Indian giant squirrel.
Now, that name registered with me immediately when I saw the title because of a popular meme on Facebook. It has gone around many times with this very colorful, vivid picture of this squirrel.
You know, it's funny that because you brought that up before the show started, and I had not seen this. But when I saw this, I said, oh, the Indian giant squirrel, nature's living rainbow. I said to myself, I have to see what this thing looks like. And I pulled up a couple pictures on Google, and I was like, wow, this thing is really cool. And then what I did was dug a little deeper. And not just the top hits, which are very special looking creatures, there's a wide variety of coats and patterns and colors on this creature. And I even showed my students in class, I said, look what I'm going to talk about here. And they said, wow, that thing is really special looking. It's a squirrel, but it looks like a clown blew up on it.
You'd suspect that it was AI, but I saw it before AI became really popular.
That's funny. Some kids said it's AI too, actually. I said, no, this is real.
No, it's real.
That's right. All right, so if for some reason you're not looking at your magazine, and why aren't you looking at your magazine? This is a really special and unique creature. It's a squirrel, but man, it's a special squirrel.
Just Google it and click on images and you will see it.
Oh, for sure.
Okay, here we go. Our title is Nature's Living Rainbow, the Indian Giant Squirrel. If you ever visit the forests of India, you may spot one of the most remarkable squirrels in the world. These colorful animals with incredibly long, fluffy tails are Indian giant squirrels or Malabar giant squirrels. These squirrels are respected and cherished in many parts of India. In Maharashtra, they are the official state animal. In some regions, they are even believed to be the messengers of gods that rule the forests and jungles.
Most of the year, Indian giant squirrels live solitary lives. But for a few months in spring or fall, individuals may be seen in pairs during mating season. These cautious and shy creatures are arboreal, meaning they spend most of their lives in trees. They build large nests of twigs and leaves called drays, which also serve as storage spaces for food. Well adapted to forest life, these squirrels use their strong claws for climbing and their long tails for balance while leaping from branch to branch. Amazingly, they can jump as far as 6 meters in a single leap.
Beyond behavior, their physical traits are equally impressive. As adults, Indian giant squirrels can reach up to 1 meter in length, making them one of the largest squirrel species. However, their tails account for most of that length. While average squirrels weigh around half a kilogram, these giant squirrels typically weigh about 2 kilograms, with rare individuals reaching nearly 3.
What truly sets them apart, however, is their multicolored fur. Their bodies are covered in shades of orange, reddish-brown, purple, and black, while their underbellies are often a mix of beige and cream, which is why they are also nicknamed rainbow squirrels.
And so now you have a clear idea of just what they look like if you don't have a picture. There's so many beautiful colors. So back to our title, Nature's Living Rainbow, the Indian Giant Squirrel. So it's like a rainbow became a living creature, and that became this squirrel. One thing I have to point out, which you probably already know because it applies to Chinese as well, and that rainbows now are often associated with LGBTQ, whatever it is, plus whatever it is. So just remember that whenever you see rainbow, it's probably going to have something to do with that if it's like a modern article or something. But here we're just talking about a rainbow without any of those associations. The Indian giant squirrel. If you ever visit the forests of India, you may spot one of the most remarkable squirrels in the world. Now, this does give us information, but it doesn't say how it's remarkable, so all we can think is, oh, that's journalistic hype. Journalistic means it has to do with reporting the news or writing articles in a kind of popularist kind of way. And hype means exaggeration. So anytime you see something is the most remarkable, you have to wonder, okay, so is this journalistic hype? How is it remarkable? It hasn't told us yet.
There are sometimes words that have kind of a colloquial slang in English. Pay attention to the forests of India. Oftentimes as a kid growing up, I didn't ever say the word the forest. I always said the woods with an S there, W-O-O-D-S. And it just means a forest. It's a little more colloquial.
When I hear forest, I think more often of the fairy tales that adults read to us when we were kids. Okay, next sentence. These colorful animals with incredibly long, fluffy tails are Indian giant squirrels or Malabar giant squirrels. Malabar is a part of India. It's in the southwest part of India. So that means it's way in the south. It's in Kerala. And by the way, India is divided into two main areas. In the north, it is Indo-European. Those are languages that are related to English, like Hindi, Marathi, and Gujarati. All of those languages, they're all related to English. In the south, they have what are called Dravidian languages that are not related at all to Indo-European. So northern India, the languages of northern India and southern India are completely unrelated to each other. They sound kind of similar if you listen to their English accents because they borrowed features from each other, but they're totally unrelated. And Malabar is in this unrelated part in the south that belongs to Kerala province, and they speak, in addition to English, a language called Konkani, Malayalam, Tulu, Kannada, and Tamil. So if you go to that place, there's a whole bunch of languages spoken, most of them not related to Hindi or English. Okay, we're going to move on. These squirrels are respected and cherished in many parts of India. So I think anybody would cherish them once you see them because they are just so beautiful. So they are really loved in India. In Maharashtra, they are the official state animal. So a lot of countries or cities or provinces or whatever, they will often choose an animal to represent them. Sometimes it's a bird. We'll have a state bird, for example. Taiwan has a national bird. So here, they are the official state animal in this particular state.
Squirrels, generally speaking, aren't animals that get a lot of respect. We have slang words that kind of mean dopey or stupid. If you have kind of a teenage boy or you have a boy around 11 years old, you might call him squirrely. And this means they have a lot of energy. They're really silly. They're not mature in any way. Squirrely. And I think generally in Western countries, squirrels get no respect. And I think I like the idea here of this really big, beautiful, colorful creature getting some recognition that in other places people are like, it's a real goofy animal.
Okay, so I was telling Chris before the show that in our family we have reasons for not being that crazy about squirrels, not me personally, but a squirrel got into our basement and couldn't get out. I don't want to go through the whole story, but it had a very sad ending. And it traumatized my sister. She still absolutely hates squirrels. But on the other hand, we are now finding out that some of them are just really beautiful. But even more importantly, they're so smart.
That's right. I think in the wrong context, when you think of a squirrel, it's smart enough to get in your house. It's not smart enough to get out. But it's smart enough to evade all of the humane and helpful traps so you could catch it and set it free. It's just smart enough to cause all sorts of trouble, but not smart enough to keep themselves safe and not smart enough to help itself get free. A lot like a little kid, which is a reason why we talk about squirrely kids.
Yeah, too much energy. What I read about more often recently is people putting out bird feeders and the squirrels just steal all the food. And so the birds don't come.
My mother used to grow sunflowers. And one of my favorite, this is a terrible thing to say, one of my favorite gardening stories ever. My mom grew this colossal, humongous sunflower. It was a humongous sunflower. I don't know how she got it so big.
Just one.
So she had a bunch, but this one was like the king
Especially
of all
big.
sunflowers.
Uh-huh.
And the day the flower opened, we were admiring it and we saw the squirrel. And we saw it run down and we saw it climb the sunflower and chop its head off in a single bite. My mom was so sad.
So sad, and ate up all the seeds.
But that's what squirrels do, and they're just little troublemakers. And so I'm happy that in Maharashtra they get a little more respect.
I have to tell one more positive story about squirrels. So if a squirrel is orphaned, another mother squirrel will observe for hours. She will observe for quite a while to see if the parents are around. If she establishes the parents really are not around, she will take that baby squirrel in and take care of it like as though it were her own baby. And that's very impressive. And also, some orphan squirrels have been taken in by humans, and they have made very affectionate pets.
I've seen beautiful videos of them. They're great-looking pets. I'm sure they're a little messy and they claw things up.
Yeah.
But if you're okay with kind of like them scratching up your furniture, you have an old couch, these would be, they're really affectionate pets.
Okay, they're pretty smart. Being smart doesn't always mean that you're going to have a good life. Okay. In some regions, they are even believed to be the messengers of gods that rule the forests and jungles.
Okay, jungles are just hot forests. In our next paragraph here, most of the year, Indian giant squirrels live solitary lives, which means they live by themselves. When they're younger, they happen to group together. And in fact, in very cold months in places like in North America, during the very coldest of times, squirrels will say, okay, everybody, let's live together for a short time. And then as soon as the weather breaks or it gets a little better, they'll go back to their solitary lives by themselves. And I think that's, again, another facet of them being really quite smart. I prefer to live alone, but you know what, buddy? It's kind of cold. Come on over here.
We got to warm each other up. I didn't know that, but I was impressed. Living in Minnesota in the winter, you still saw squirrels running around. I thought, you can actually survive this weather outside?
It's crazy, right?
It is. So that's one of the ways I guess they do it.
I learned actually researching for this article that they actually can smell through snow. That we often think of them just randomly depositing nuts, and sometimes they dig a hole and forget to put it in the hole. They do that on purpose to kind of trick other squirrels.
Yeah, I know
because
that.
other ones are watching, and they can actually smell through the snow and say, oh, there's a nut here. So they're more impressive than I think a lot of people give them credit for.
That is indeed impressive.
But for a few months in spring or fall, individuals may be seen in pairs during mating season, I think for obvious reasons.
One would expect sooner or later. Okay.
These cautious and shy creatures are arboreal, meaning they spend most of their lives in trees.
Arbor is the Latin word for tree, and that's where we get this adjective. So very often we have a very easy word for the noun, but we have a Latinate word for the adjective.
Okay, listen here. So these cautious and shy creatures are arboreal. I add an additional pause here. Yeah, you have that little pause there because this R and arboreal are so similar. It's the only way you can really separate them cleanly.
So watch out if you have a bunch of R's together. And if they're mixed with W's, then be really careful because even native speakers will trip up. I will often misspeak when there's a whole bunch of W's and R's together. The word aurora is kind of hard to say.
I agree. Aurora.
Yeah.
Let's go to our next sentence. They build large nests of twigs and leaves called drays, which also serve as storage spaces for food.
It's interesting because this is a word I'd never heard before. Actually, I'd heard it with a different spelling, a totally different word. D-R-E-Y is not even in Merriam-Webster. I know the word D-R-A-Y,
right,
which is a flatbed cart. You can push it with handles, and it's usually got only 2 wheels. That's a dray. We don't use that word very often anymore. But D-R-E-Y was the first time I've seen this word. I had to go to a much bigger dictionary to find it.
Yeah, I always called them squirrel nests growing up. That's what we called it. And we called it the trolley, too, actually, because the D-R-A-Y, I always called that a trolley. I actually double-checked this, too, because I also thought it was D-R-A-Y. And I also learned, just like you, oh, no, this is the beer trolley. This is the squirrel nest. Here's some specific words for you today.
Except for you have to look at the spelling, because if you hear them, they sound the same.
Our next sentence, well adapted to forest life, these squirrels use their strong claws for climbing and their long tails for balance while leaping from branch to branch.
And if you watch their tails while they are climbing or just about doing anything, especially if they stay still for a minute and then get ready to climb, boy, that tail really twitches around.
They communicate to each other this way. So squirrels like to vocalize and they have their own calls, but they also use their tail for language like a lot of other animals. Probably most famously, cats use their tail for communication. Squirrels do the same. And if you're very careful and you observe them very closely, you could be able to differentiate certain behaviors based upon what their tails are saying. They like to make this S motion a lot when they're kind of curious and paying attention. Oftentimes it's because you're staring at them and they feel uncomfortable.
That makes sense. And they do have a bunch of different calls. Like when I'm out hiking, I'm thinking, what kind of a bird is that? But I look up and it's gawk, 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 gawk. It's a squirrel.
It's some goofy squirrel, right? So a leap is just a kind of jump. It's a strong, forceful jump. Think if you're standing still and you want to jump as far as you can, that's a leap. Our next sentence, amazingly, they can jump as far as 6 meters in a single leap.
Okay, we're going to move on. Beyond behavior, their physical traits are equally impressive. So this also doesn't give us a lot of information about how they're impressive. It's just like saying most remarkable squirrels. We don't know how they're impressive, but we'll find out soon. As adults, Indian giant squirrels can reach up to 1 meter in length, making them one of the largest squirrel species.
Half of that length is their tail. So
Right.
the body of a squirrel is about, half a meter. And then it has this really long tail that's fluffy and beautiful.
And strong.
And strong. And this helps it when it jumps to help guide it correctly where it needs to go. It gives it a little bit more spring in its step. And because we're talking about squirrel species, in fact, there are over 280 species of squirrel.
Phew.
Go figure.
That's a lot of species. So we've already explained the next sentence. However, their tails account for most of that length. It's sort of like they say a building is really, really high, but there's a spire on the
Right.
top.
Right.
And there's no rooms or anything there. It's just this big pointing thing. Okay, so it's their tail, although it's an impressive tail. While average squirrels weigh around half a kilogram, these giant squirrels typically weigh about 2 kilograms, with rare individuals reaching nearly 3.
Dude, 3 kilograms of squirrel is a lot of squirrel.
Yeah, I have a 3 kilogram weight, so I know about how heavy it is.
Like
Yeah.
grabbing the squirrel and curling him. So next to our 3 kilogram squirrel here, I wrote the word chonker, which is a colloquial word meaning chubby and fat and cute. You'll often read it in relationship to animal memes that you'll find online. Chonker sounds like the word chunky, which is standard English. Chunky is C-H-U-N-K-Y.
Which makes me think of peanut butter.
That's right, or a little fat. This word, chonker, is kind of a new word that you'll often see online. Chonker is C-H-O-N-K-E-R.
It's a new word for me. I didn't know it.
Really?
I didn't know it.
Type in chonker animals, and you're going to see some pleasantly plump, fat little animals, and they're usually really adorable. It's emphasizing the cuteness of them because of their size.
Okay, Chris just used an expression that's worth learning because it is a euphemism. That means it's a sort of polite way to say something that is usually kind of negative. So if a woman is overweight, now do women like attention being called to their weight if they're just like a little overweight?
No, of course not.
No, or a lot overweight, they don't like it. And it's not polite to mention it at all. In fact, the word fat, I think, may actually be like banned.
I agree. It's pretty taboo. I agree.
A lot of people, you better not say the word fat, except for the person herself or himself may say, well, I'm fat. That's it. They can say it, but just don't say, hey, you're fat. Look at that fat lady. It is now pretty taboo because there is so much obesity in the States. So one way that people would describe a woman who is a bit overweight and try not to be offensive, they would say, so what does she look like? Well, she's about 5'6", and I'd say she's pleasantly plump.
That's right. That plump giving a little bit hint that she's maybe a little bit heavy or overweight.
Or maybe very much so.
And yeah, that's correct. And before we move on to our final paragraph, because we're talking about 3 kilograms of squirrel, it's important to remember that especially in the past, squirrels were important sources of protein for many early Americans. That includes the Native Americans and the early colonists. They would often hunt squirrels because rabbits and other animals were a little bit harder to get in the winter, and there are books from several hundred years ago that would describe how to cook squirrels in many different ways. Today, it's pretty rare for people to eat squirrel, although hunters may, still enjoy it.
And they were also valued for their pelts, for their skins.
Yeah, very much so. All right, our final paragraph here today. What truly sets them apart, however, is their multicolored fur.
Yeah, it is just dazzling if you look at them.
Their bodies are covered in shades of orange, reddish-brown, purple, and black, while their underbellies are often a mix of beige and cream, which is why they are also nicknamed rainbow squirrels.
And that purple is really purple.
Yeah, so blue is a color that is famously not found in nature very easily.
Except for the sky.
Except for the sky, that's right. But if you want to make food dyes, if you want to make something to change colors into a rich shade of blue, you almost certainly need petroleum-based chemicals to get the blues that you see in your clothes or the toys around you or honestly the food that a lot of children like to eat.
And actually, we tend to avoid blue food because it's not natural. So for a birthday when I was very young, maybe 8 years old, they said, well, Karen, what kind of a cake do you want? Well, I want a cherry cake with blue frosting. And my mother and sister looked at me and said, you sure about that? I said, blue is my favorite color. I want blue frosting. And then they looked at each other again. They go, okay, we'll give you blue frosting. And as you can imagine, that cake did not get finished.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I'm trying to think. I've seen kind of blue trim on icing, and I wouldn't think twice about that. Like a wholly blue cake. I got to say, yeah, I can't recall seeing a lot of my cake looks like a Smurf or something.
I think people associate it with mold.
Mold, yeah, very much so. Colors of green or blue on a meat, you're not going to eat that.
No.
No, you're not going to eat that at all.
Okay, and so the colors that they mention here on their bellies, a mix of beige and cream. These are colors in Chinese. You can also call them cream. There's a Chinese word that's the equivalent. Or you call them the color of rice. And beige is a little bit more brownish. So we can also call it off-white. It looks sort of white. And in normal language, we would just say white. But if we want to be more specific, we will say beige or cream or off-white.
I wrote tan, but I kind of like eggshell whites or, kind of like you said, in Chinese, rice is the right color for that.
That's
I agree.
Right.
But I think in everyday English, we might say off-white. That's the best way to put this. Beige, tan, taupe, beige, all sorts of milky colors. Now, you could find squirrels literally everywhere in the world except 2 places. I bet you can guess the first one.
I think in extremely cold places like Antarctica.
That's right. And the other place is Australia. So Australia is interesting because there have been lots of invasive species. In fact, squirrels are kind of invasive in almost all places. But for some reason, they've been very successful at keeping them out of Australia, which is probably for the best.
As I understand, they worked very hard to keep them out of New Zealand.
Oh.
As I understand, I believe it's squirrels, but they had to be really careful with invasive species because New Zealand was so isolated that invasive species would come in and just take over the whole ecology.
Yeah, I feel conflicted because I feel sad they got to kill them all, but I totally get it. It is for the best. Keep that original environment intact.
Okay, that's all we have for you today, but actually this is only part 1 of a 2-part article. So tune in tomorrow for part 2. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.